Hey everybody, it's Mama Kay coming at you again from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I'm so thrilled that this person agreed to be interviewed by me today. I've known them for many, many years, but I really got to know them quite well when they agreed to let me be a student teacher in their program 9 years ago now. And I originally wanted to go and work alongside of them because of their fantastic jazz band program at their high school. But really, I ended up learning so much more than just jazz. I really learned a lot of skills that I use to this day as to how to be on the podium with confidence and to just go for it. I remember the first time that I sort of sang a line in front of the band, and he and I had a great talk after about, no, you have to sing like you mean it. You actually have to sing like you're doing it right, or else the kids will eat you alive. And so now every single time I'm not ashamed, I go for it with confidence, and just I loved learning beside him. And I think that school is so lucky to have him. So I'm yammering on too much. Special guest, who are you?
Hey, my name's Dan Steinhilber, and I've been the band teacher and choir teacher at Transcona Collegiate. Well, I've been the band teacher there since 2007, and I just started teaching choir this past year, choir and vocal jazz. And before that, I taught for 6 years at John W. Gunn Middle School. I started in 2001. So this year, actually, I'll have been teaching for 20 years, which is kind of weird because I've never, you always look up at other people as being, the experienced band teachers, but at some point, I'm going to have to admit that I might have some experience. And just so you know, having you as a student teacher was like one of the highlights of my career. You were just one of the best ever. So I knew that you would be like a killer teacher from the second that you stepped on that podium.
That is so kind of you. I really, both of my student teaching placements, I got so lucky that you guys agreed. I know I had Chantal for my first placement at Golden Gate, and then to get to really, it felt like hanging out with you every day. It felt like we were colleagues. It didn't feel like a cooperating teacher-student teacher, like the discussions we had, even beyond band stuff, right? It's like, it was really a great experience. So thank you.
I think we were more colleagues. And I think the fact that you came in with so much teaching experience, teaching flute under your belt, it meant that you understood what it meant to put the work boots on and get in there and do the work. Whereas a lot of younger teachers have to learn that part of it, right? Because when we're young, we don't get some of those, we don't have some of those pieces yet in place. So it was a real joy to have you.
Well, thanks, Dan. So I am so curious as to how you even got into music, because I know you are a person of many skills and music is just really one of them. So let's go back. I always think of Wayne's World, doodle doodle doodle, to baby Dan. How in the world did you get to the point where you wanted to go to be a music educator?
Well, I grew up as a kid. I went to Rowendale Baptist Church, close to Henderson, and growing up, we sang in church a bunch. And I loved to sing, and I was able to do it with some level of competency. And then when I was in grade 5, we had a church band at our church. Peter Ulrich was the director of this little church band that he put together, and so we decided that I was going to play trumpet because we had a trumpet in the closet somewhere, and I learned how to play trumpet or I learned the fingerings in the cry room of the church, and started that journey and continued to play trumpet and enjoyed it throughout junior high and high school. And I didn't really think that was going to be my career path. Like a lot of kids think I said I didn't want my hobby to become my job. I was worried that would, I don't know, tarnish it or something. But as it turned out, I graduated from high school and I went into sciences. I was planning on doing management, and so that was my pre-management coursework. But it was soul killing. There was no joy in going to university to study matrices and those types of things. I enjoyed some of the other coursework in social psychology and sociology and psychology and all those things, but a lot of the courses were just soul killers. And so I took a year off, Growing up, I worked on a construction site with my dad since I was like 11. And so I had some construction shops. And so I took a year and I worked various construction jobs doing basement foundations, painting, landscaping, framing, electrical, that type of thing. And realized over the course of that year that if I continued to do that, my body would probably give out by the time I was 45. And so I was really motivated to go back to school. And this is turning into a long story. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is good. This is a great story. It's all, it's all real important because it has shaped who you are now.
Yeah, for sure. So while I was in sciences, I had the opportunity, I connected with the jazz bands at the faculty or at the School of Music, and Richard Gillis was the person who was sort of heading that up. And so I connected with Richard Gillis through those jazz bands during my time in sciences. And at some point during my construction year, I determined that maybe I'd like to pursue music, in fact. And so the summer of '96, I guess, I called up Ray Noguero, a family friend, and I asked him if he would give me a couple trumpet lessons. So he gave me 2 trumpet lessons. I hadn't really played my trumpet a whole lot for that year, and so I was kind of raw, but I went in and I did an audition. I think it was August that I went in and did an audition for the School of Music. And I actually sang for Henry Engbrecht too, because he was doing the choir thing, and I enjoyed singing. And so they somehow let me into the School of Music. And I knew going in that teaching was the direction I wanted to take. I knew that was the direction. I would never really had any ambition to become a professional musician. I think part of it was seeing some of the professional musicians in my life and the sacrifices they had to make, like, relationally in order to do that. I knew they faced a lot of challenges relationally, because the job takes so much out of you as a professional musician. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I really respect professionals, like, it's really hard to do that for a living. So but yeah, so that's I went into the Faculty of Music, or the School of Music, and spent 5 years there, and graduated in 2001 and got a gig at John W. Gunn Middle School and cut my teeth there and learned a ton. I had some good student teaching or cooperating teachers as well, and Roger Manti was one of them. And Roger is he's basically a genius. The guy is smarter than everybody. And not only is he a genius, but he can play every band instrument proficiently. Like, the guy used to make me mad. I would be demonstrating trumpet stuff for the jazz band, and he'd pick up the trumpet and he'd play a high D and he'd sizzle it. And I would just shake my head and be like, I don't know what to say.
Saxophone's his main instrument, right?
Yeah, he's a saxophonist. But he's just he's a brilliant guy, very driven. And it was a great student teaching experience. I learned a lot from him too. So that's sort of the background.
So did you play in band at all? Besides in the church band, did you play, what junior high did you go to? What high school did you go to?
Well, I went to Edmund Partridge Junior High.
Did you?
Grant Page was my band teacher.
No.
And Grant was great. He was very cut and dried about stuff. And in my first year, in grade 8 was the first year you were allowed to be in jazz band. So I auditioned for the jazz band. And it's so funny. I remember this. I don't remember a lot of things from when I was a kid, but I remember this. I remember knowing that I was better than all the other trumpet players. Okay. And this sounds really arrogant. I remember knowing that, but he put me on 4th trumpet. And at first I was like, what's going on here? But as the year went on, I realized okay, I gotta learn this from the bottom up, or from a non-leadership perspective, so that I can understand how to approach leadership. It was a good move by him. I learned a little bit from having to be a good follower, because that's a skill too, right? Being a good follower. And then I went to then I went to West Kildonan Collegiate, and our music program in West Kildonan was kind of a smallish thing. It ended up being a little bit more of like you might call it a combo, because there was like 3 or 4 horns and a rhythm section, and so it was we didn't play wind excuse me, we didn't play wind ensemble music or anything. So when I got to university, the first time I ever heard First Suite in E flat or any of the other like canon pieces was when I saw them in university, which and I mean, ever since then I've really enjoyed them. But I never did any wind ensemble stuff growing up, and so and my music education was different, I think, than a lot of the traditional kids who become band teachers, because most people end up, they start off and they have these wonderful high school wind ensemble experiences, and then they go into university and it's just like they carry through, right? Mm-hmm. But mine was a little bit, I think every leg of my journey was slightly different. Took a lot of zigs and zags.
So who taught band at West K?
It was Owen Clark.
Owen was there. Very neat.
Owen is still around too. We
just recently became Facebook friends.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very neat. So did you ever study privately with anybody? Any private trumpet lessons? Oh, you said you had a couple lessons from Reno, right? But before that, like, did you study at all?
I took a few lessons, or I spent a year or 2 studying with Grant Page, because he was a trumpet player. Right. After I graduated, left when I was in high school. I spent like a year or 2 with him, and I think that was the extent of the trumpet lessons that I took. There was a whole year after high school before I went to the Faculty of Music where the trumpet was in the closet, and it was. I guess there's seasons in a person's life, right? Where some things go to the side and other things come to the forefront. And I think that happened with trumpet for me. And then I came back to it, right? And I mean, I've been playing ever since. From that point forward, I think there's been good years and bad years, but I've been playing ever since, and yeah.
And didn't you just recently go back and do some extra jazz studies?
Yeah, I went to the U of M and I studied with Derek Gardner. I did a jazz, a post-baccalaureate in jazz performance with Derek Gardner at the U of M. That was a great experience. The post-bac program, as an educator, you can do post-bacs in various like administration or counseling or different things. But I thought that if I did an academic post-bac, it really wouldn't grab me and hold my, I would have no passion for it, right? So I decided to do a post-bac in jazz performance, and it was a great experience because the way that the program is structured, you have a lot of freedom to find different things that interest you and pursue different angles. I was able to do a couple of independent study courses with some of the teachers and with some of the profs, as well as my lessons with Derek, and playing in some ensembles. Met lots of great young musicians who inspired me and kind of gave me a little bit of a kick in the butt, which is what you want to do, right? You want to have people who push you, and it was a good experience. I would recommend it to folks who want to learn.
I think it's really important that we continually put ourselves out there so that we don't forget what it feels like to be a little nervous and scared and out of our comfort zone, right? So that we're not so far removed from the students that we teach every day, right? We remember how that feels.
Oh yeah, and like a lot of people potentially in the jazz community might see me as someone who's one of the jazz guys, right? But when I get up and improvise in front of guys like Derek and Larry Roy and Will Bonis and all those, and John Gordon and all those guys, like I was peeing my pants every single time. Like it was very frightening. So when I come back to my students at school, I tell them like, hey, I know exactly how you feel. It is what it is. You're gonna be terrified, and the thing is, that's where you learn the most, right? Is when we're terrified and when we're uncomfortable. that's where we really develop skills. And yeah.
It's nice though that even though you were terrified, you knew that if you failed, it was safe to fail there, right? And I know you create that culture in your band room too, whereas like kids feel safe to try and to maybe not be successful, but they know that you will support them in trying again.
Well, that is so okay. Now I'm going to take this. That's an interesting thing that you say, because my willingness to take risks and fail is not based necessarily on my experiences or the coursework I've done or this or that. I think it's more based on my faith and the fact that I believe that I've been created and I have like inherent worth simply by the fact that I've been created. And all of my students, I believe, are the same, right? And so I know that my value as a person does not hinge on my ability to play a good jazz solo. I know it doesn't hinge on my ability to be a good teacher or to have a killing band program or whatever, right? My value is based on something much deeper than that. And I try to instill that sort of thought in my students as well. You don't want to, you can't really talk about religion in school because it's not appropriate, right? Where that's not our role, and it would be wrong for us to do that.
No, but I think it shapes you in how you model that behavior.
Yeah, and I think the core of my beliefs, I think I can transmit that to students in a way that they know that they're loved and they're valued regardless of whether they're good or not. I mean, I think that, and that concept, that principle, that it kind of is one of the core things that drives me and motivates me, has also helped me when I've had to deal with challenging students to remember, you know what, this kid was created with a purpose and they have inherent value. And so I can't write them off. I'm not qualified to write them off. There's someone who's higher than me who has the sort of trump cards in that area. So yeah, that's been a big part of my experience too.
Well, yeah, it shines through with, I think, in all that you do. So we're going to take a different spin on things now. And I don't need to tell you this, but I'll tell you anyways, because it's my big disclaimer. It's a family show. So remember that when you're answering this next part. What is perhaps one of the strangest gigs or jobs that you've ever been involved in?
Yeah, okay. So when I was in university one time, I got a call. Richard Gillis passed this gig on to me. It's always calls would come to Richard for trumpet players, right? And so he passed them on to people. So I got this gig, and I was supposed to play like a racetrack fanfare for this old lady who was having like her 80th birthday or something at this little restaurant in on the west side of the city, Unicity or St. James or whatever, right? But I'm from the extreme other side of the city. I'm from the northeast, and so that area is never, like, I don't know it. So I had to play this fanfare, and I think play Hello Dolly or something. I think it was Hello Dolly so they wanted me to play the fanfare and then play Hello Dolly as this woman walked from her car into the restaurant out on the sidewalk. So I did the classic rookie mistake, and I thought, okay, this gig is at 3:00, so I'm going to get there at 3:00. And it turned out that traffic was a little heavier, and I ended up showing up a couple minutes late. The woman had already gone into the restaurant. They were all standing there, and they were really gracious. And they said, well, why don't you play it now? And so, you know, I sheepishly took my trumpet out and played the stuff. and they ended up giving me money, and I felt terrible taking their money because it was like, but I didn't know what else. So I just sort of sheepishly grabbed it, and I was like, okay, thanks, take care. So that was the weirdest, strangest gig I've ever had, I think, that I can remember. And it was a good learning experience for me.
No kidding. I bet you never made that mistake again.
On time is late, right? And late is fine.
That's fantastic. I'm sure you have some scarier stories from band trips and whatnot, but we won't go there today.
Actually, I don't. My
really?
band trip, historically, the worst thing that has ever happened. Well, when I was at John Gunn, there was in the morning one time, there was a couple of kids who were in the wrong rooms, But that it happened once, and that's the only time I've ever dealt with anything like marginally serious, even on a band trip.
Well, I think
My
you are
students
one of
are
the lucky
amazing.
ones.
I love my students. They're amazing.
So there's probably going to be students that are watching this. What sort of advice do you have for kids who are thinking about possibly going into music as a career?
It is a career that is incredibly rewarding. You got to know that when you go to the Faculty of Music, it's not going to be like being in band in high school. It is going to be all music all the time. You really have to be driven. You have to be passionate about what you do. And you have to remember that when you start teaching, if you want to become a band teacher, remember that you're teaching students. You're not teaching band, you're teaching students. And if we're teaching music to students, then we have to be willing to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it, and move with what is the best thing for the students, right? And so this time of COVID-19 has actually been a massive example of great teachers doing that all over the place. We're finding new ways to deliver music teaching and to encourage our students and to motivate our students, and ourselves as teachers. I mean, this series of YouTube videos is another example of a way of a teacher innovating and finding new ways to connect with students. You know, we're all doing that type of thing, learning new instruments, learning how to use different pieces of technology. As a teacher, you constantly have to be open-minded and ready to adapt. You can't take yourself too seriously, because if you take yourself too seriously, then you lose sight, like you start to think about yourself versus thinking about the people in front of you. And yeah, I think that I could go on for hours and hours.
No, that's great advice for sure. Like, you need to go in there, like you said, and meet the students where they are, right? It's like you can have your own vision, but it's like, depending on who's in front of you, that can shift in a heartbeat, right? They really dictate the direction. I mean, you lead the direction, but they're the core.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like so many times as people who have gone into the Faculty of Music and who have studied music at a high level, the kids who we feel like are our people are the ones who are super motivated to do music and show you that motivation from day one, and they were the ones that who won all the solos. And I would really encourage young teachers to look beyond those kids. Don't take away opportunities from them. Try to give those kids, you want to give them as many opportunities as possible. But the kid who is the third clarinet player, the kid who is not the top of the class, so to speak, you never know whether after a year or two something's going to click in that kid, and they are going to become passionate just like this other kid. So I try to give opportunities to all my students, and all of my students in jazz improvise. And in concert band, every single student, I spread out the first, second, third parts to everyone. And sometimes what that means is the kid on first trumpet really is struggling to actually do what they need to do. But more often than not, they rise to the occasion, and you end up getting a kid who never saw themselves as a leader, taking on that leadership role and growing into it. And I think as music teachers, that is and as teachers of anything really, that is one of our goals, is to teach kids how to be good adults and how to be good leaders and how to be good followers. And so don't write off any of the kids in your group. Don't assume that they're not capable of doing something. In fact, just this last month, I have a student who is an older student in one of my bands, who really struggled, could not even play like major scales on their instrument, and for the last few years. And you know, this year with this, we're doing everything by recordings now. I've received some recordings from this student that just blew my mind. This person stepped up during this time and came out of their musical shell, so to speak. So you never know when it's going to happen. Don't give up on those kids.
I know for me, and some of the assignments that I'm getting into, some of the kids that have always been very, very quiet and less forthcoming in their in everything they do in the band room, they're the ones who are turning in the most with the most detail. It's really cool getting to know my students on that different level and this different way of learning. So I'm hoping that when we all get back together, that I can build on that starting relationship that way too. So we have a couple moments left. And my last question is always, do you have any extra little tidbits of wisdom going forward in these times?
Oh man. You know, this is such an opportunity. Everything's changing, right? But it's an opportunity. I think people who are great, when bad things happen, when challenging situations happen, they take those opportunities to retool and reinvent and find a new angle. And so that's what I would suggest to people. Work on finding a new way to do things and innovate. I mean, I've been meaning to learn guitar for years, so I'm finally sitting and strumming every day a little bit. I'm terrible, but that's not going to stop me. I'm going to keep working at it because I want to sing songs and play the guitar, you know? So that's what I'm working on. And yeah, work on yourself, find ways to innovate during this time.
Great advice. Dan, I am so happy that we got time together this morning. I can't wait to see you in person. It's always so much fun getting to talk to you. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day on the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, thanks. I agree, Joanne. And thank you so much for having me. Your students are so lucky. They have no idea how amazing well, they probably have an idea of how amazing you are, but you're even more amazing. So thanks, Joanne.
And you're so kind. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.